I never thought the sound of laughter could hurt this much. It used to fill our home. Warm, spontaneous, ours. Now it echoes in my mind like a ghost, mocking the woman I used to be. My name is Elise, and last year, on the day that was supposed to remind me I was loved, I discovered I was invisible. My husband forgot my birthday because he was celebrating it with another woman. It started quietly, a slow fade, like colors losing brightness after too many washes. He wasn't cruel, not at first, just distracted. The small things changed. The way his eyes wandered when I spoke, the way he flinched when my phone lit up with messages from my friends, as if their laughter was an intrusion. But I convinced myself it was work, fatigue, life. We had been married 7 years. Surely that meant we had survived the storms. The week before my birthday, I found him humming in the kitchen. That should have made me happy. He hadn't done that in months. The morning light touched his face, soft and gold, and I felt something flutter inside me. Hope. "You remember what day it is next week?" I teased, pretending not to care. He smiled without looking up from his coffee. "Of course I do," he said, too quickly, too easily. I wanted to believe him. I really did. I spent the next days planning something small. Dinner, candles, a little music. Not the extravagant parties we used to have, just something intimate. I bought a new dress. Deep blue silk. The kind that makes you feel seen even if no one's looking. I even baked the cake myself, the one he always said reminded him of the first one I made when we were broke and happy. The morning of my birthday, the house felt lighter. The sun slid across the floor like honey. I made coffee, waiting for him to come downstairs, expecting a kiss, a happy birthday, love, maybe even flowers. But he rushed past me with a briefcase in one hand and guilt in his eyes. "I'll be late tonight," he said, meeting with clients. No mention of the day, no glance at the small wrapped box I'd left on the counter with his name on it, a watch I'd saved for months to buy. When the door closed, the silence pressed on me like a weight. I stared at the empty cup he left behind. The steam faded, and with it, a piece of my patience. I tried to make excuses. He'd surprise me later. He was planning something. Maybe he'd forgotten just for now. That's what love does when it's dying. It bargains with ghosts. But as the hours dragged, my phone stayed silent. No text, no call, just the tick of the clock and the slow, cruel realization that he wasn't coming home. By 8 that night, the candles had burned low. I sat alone at the table, the cake untouched, my dress clinging to my skin like regret. Outside, laughter floated from the neighbor's house. A birthday, maybe. I felt tears burning, but they wouldn't fall. Something stronger held them back. Pride. I blew out the candles myself and whispered a wish I never thought I'd make. Let me see the truth, no matter how much it hurts. That wish was granted faster than I expected. Around 10, my friend Clara called. Her voice trembled. "Elise, are you home?" she asked. I said yes. She hesitated before saying the words that split my world open. "I just saw David, at the Crescent Lounge. He's not alone." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room tilted, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I wanted to believe it was someone else, but Clara wouldn't lie. She never had. I thanked her quietly, hung up, and sat there, staring at the half-melted wax on the table. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes before a storm. I changed out of the blue dress and into jeans and a sweater. I looked in the mirror, saw a woman who deserved the truth, and whispered, "All right then, let's find out." I didn't know that what I was about to see would change everything I believed about love, loyalty, and myself. The Crescent Lounge sat on the corner like a memory that refused to fade. Dim lights, velvet booths, a piano that sighed between songs. I stood across the street for a long moment, pretending to check my phone, counting the slow breaths that kept my hands from shaking. The night air tasted like metal and rain, the kind that leaves a sting on your tongue. When I finally crossed, my heels clicked against the pavement with a rhythm that felt like borrowed courage. Inside, the room was amber and shadow. Glasses rang softly, laughter coiled around the saxophone's low hum, and the scent of orange peel and whiskey stroked the edges of my resolve. I moved slowly, a stranger in a familiar place, and let my eyes adjust until they stopped searching and found him, David, my husband, in a booth near the back, beneath a halo of warm light that shouldn't have belonged to him tonight. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, listening the way he used to listen to me when love was still young and cheap. He smiled that quiet smile, the one I had worked so hard to wake up every morning, and it settled on a woman with polished nails and laughter like wind chimes. She wore a red dress that caught the light every time she moved, scattering it like little rebellions on the wall behind them. It was not the dress that hurt me, it was the ease, the familiar rhythm of belonging that lived between their words. I slipped into a corner at the bar where I could see without being seen. The bartender nodded, respectful, and set down a glass of water without asking. Maybe he saw something in my face. Maybe women come here often to measure the worth of their lives against the softness of a booth and a man who forgot where home is. I wrapped my hand around the glass, its cold skin steadying my pulse, and listened. "Happy birthday," she said, laughing, lifting a small boxed gift wrapped in gold paper. "My name is Elise, and I could not breathe." He took the box with a boyish grin I hadn't seen in months. "You didn't have to," he said, but his voice was a caress, an old, practiced one. He opened it slowly, reverent, as if unwrapping a secret he'd been saving for himself. Inside was a slim silver bracelet engraved on the inside. I couldn't read the words from where I was, but the way his thumb traced them told me they weren't mine. He forgot my birthday for hers. I didn't cry. The strangest things keep us upright in moments like these. Posture, pride, a glass of water that you refuse to spill. I took my phone from my purse and opened the camera, not to expose him to the world, not yet, but to anchor myself in what was real. I recorded 20 seconds, then another 10, little slices of truth that I could replay when my mind tried to lie and say this was a nightmare I had invented. The camera turned the pain into evidence, and evidence into fuel. He reached across the table and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. That gesture had once belonged to me on bus rides and in airport queues, those small ceremonies that say, without words, "I see you." He said something that made her touch her necklace and look down shyly. Then she lifted her gaze, and for a second I saw a softness that made my anger stumble. She didn't look like a villain. She looked like someone who believed she was loved. And that complicates the story we prefer to tell. I listened as the saxophone paused and the low hum of conversation rose. Snatches of their words reached me. "New start. I'm sure. It's time." My mouth dried. Time for what? Time to break me properly? Time to erase the 7 years that had built our home? A waitress passed by with citrus and mint and a smile I could not return. I sipped the water. It did nothing. They ordered dessert, a small plate with a single candle. He clapped softly as she blew it out, and then leaned in to kiss her cheek. Not quite her lips, a promise deferred. The kiss landed like a theft in my chest. I closed my eyes and saw the cake I had baked, the candles I blew out alone, the wish I whispered for the truth. Well, here it was, glowing in red silk and gold ribbon, right on schedule. I could have walked to the table. I could have said his name the way I said it the first time I loved him, soft but undeniable, but I didn't. Dignity is not the absence of pain, it's the discipline to hold pain like a fragile glass and decide where to place it. So I watched for a while longer, studying the angles of betrayal, mapping its routine, the way he checked his watch and smiled at her apology for keeping him late, the way his shoulders softened, a softness he'd denied me for months. When they stood to leave, I stood too, letting the crowd swallow me. He guided her with a hand at the small of her back. That, too, had once been mine. I slipped outside ahead of them and stood beneath the awning while a light rain began to write its own story on the sidewalk. The street lamps smeared gold across the wet pavement. They came out laughing, running toward a car I recognized too well. He opened the door for her. She slid in, trusting. He didn't look around. He didn't have to. On nights like this, men like him count on the world staying small and quiet. As the car pulled away, the rain grew steadier. I let it find my face and imagined it washing away what I didn't need anymore. Denial, excuses, the habit of raising my voice into empty rooms. I wasn't going to stage a scene on a sidewalk. I wasn't going to scream under someone else's light. I was going to take this truth home, place it on the table where my cake still waited, and decide what shape my power would take. I ordered a ride and sent the video clips to my email, then to a private folder. Not for revenge alone, but for clarity. Because at dawn, pain likes to pretend it never happened. On the way home, the city blurred past. Neon, glass, the blur of lives that did not include me. I watched my reflection in the window until it steadied into a woman I almost recognized. When I reached the house, I unlocked the door as if returning to a museum of a life. The candles were dead, the cake patient, the gift box for him untouched beside the watch I'd chosen with love and earned with long hours. I stood there in the quiet and decided I would not let this be the ugliest thing that ever happened to me. If he wanted a performance, he would not get it here. He would get something else. Colder, cleaner, exact. I took off my sweater and folded it carefully on a chair. Then I opened my laptop, created a new document, and titled it with today's date. I began to write everything I had seen, preserving the details that would matter later, and added the videos as links. When I finished, I closed the lid and turned off the lights. Sleep did not come, but something like resolve did. I lay awake and planned in silence, listening to the house breathe, waiting for the click of the lock that would signal his return, and with it, the next beginning I hadn't chosen but would own. The door opened just before 2 a.m. I didn't move. The sound of his keys hitting the counter used to mean home. Now it was just a small betrayal dressed as routine. He paused, probably surprised that the lights were off, then muttered my name softly, as if calling a pet that might have run away. I watched from the hallway, unseen, as he loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. His reflection in the window caught mine. Faint, ghostly, and for a heartbeat I thought he saw me. But he didn't. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, smiling once, briefly, before erasing it with a sigh. I stepped out slowly, letting my voice find its strength. "Did your meeting run long?" He froze, glass halfway to his lips. "Elise, you scared me." "I didn't mean to," I said, stepping closer. "I just thought you might want a slice of cake before bed." The look that crossed his face, confusion first, then guilt, told me more than any confession could. He tried to speak, but I lifted a hand. "You forgot," I whispered. "You forgot my birthday." He started the usual dance, apologies tangled with excuses. "Elise, I swear, I was going to—" "Don't," I said, my voice steady. "Not tonight. You were with her." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Crescent Lounge," I said quietly. Gold paper, silver bracelet, candle. I saw everything. The color drained from his face. For a moment he looked small. Not the man who'd lied, but the man who knew the lie had finally run out of air. "It's not what you think," he managed, the oldest line in the book. "It never is," I said. "Until it is." Silence thickened between us. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, even my own breathing. He set the glass down carefully, like it might shatter the room if it fell. "Elise, please," he said. "I made a mistake. It just happened." I laughed, but there was no humor left in me. "It just happened? You forgot your wife's birthday because something just happened?" I shook my head slowly. "That's not an accident, David. That's a choice." He moved closer, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me. You don't get to comfort me through the pain you caused." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said softly, "What do you want me to say?" "The truth," I said. "Not the edited version, not the one you tell yourself to sleep at night. Just the truth." He hesitated, then sighed. "Her name's Natalie. I met her through work. It started as late nights, then dinners, then—" His voice cracked. "I don't know how I got here." "You got here one small betrayal at a time," I said. "Every time you ignored me, Every time you lied about staying late. Every time you made me feel invisible." He closed his eyes, shame folding him inward. "I never meant to hurt you." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think at all." I picked up the small wrapped box from the counter, the one with his watch inside, and placed it gently in his hands. "This was for you," I said. "I spent months saving for it. I thought maybe if I gave you something thoughtful, you'd remember the man you used to be." He looked down at the gift, speechless. "Elise." I turned away before his tears could find me. "I'm not going to scream or break things," I said softly. "That's too easy, but I will remember this night exactly as it is. And one day, when you wonder why I stopped trying, I want you to remember it too." I walked past him, up the stairs, each step steady, deliberate. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the photograph on the nightstand. The two of us on a beach years ago, laughing under a sky that had no idea what would come. I thought about smashing the frame, but instead I turned it face down. Some memories don't deserve the light. Downstairs, I heard him sob once. Low, muffled. Then silence. I lay there until dawn painted the walls gray. My body felt hollow, but inside the emptiness, something small and fierce was taking shape. A decision. That morning, I showered, dressed, and made coffee without looking at him. He sat at the table, eyes swollen, hands clasped like a child caught in a storm he built himself. "Elise, please, let's talk," he said. "I'm done talking," I replied. "I'm acting." I opened my laptop, slid the folder across the table, and said, "These are the videos, the truth you made me collect. I'm not sharing them yet, but you'll sign the house over to me today, and you'll leave quietly. No scandal, no public mess, just the dignity I'm choosing to give you." He stared at me as if I'd become someone else. Maybe I had. "You'd really do that?" he whispered. "I already am," I said. "If you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you, you'll understand what comes next. Stay with me. And don't forget to subscribe if this story feels close to your heart. Because what I did after that morning wasn't revenge. It was something colder. Something that looked a lot like justice wrapped in calm. When he finally agreed, head bowed, voice cracking, I saw no victory in it, just the slow undoing of a man who thought love would wait forever. I called my lawyer that afternoon. By sunset, the papers were ready. He packed his things while I stood by the door. Arms folded, no tears left. As he left, he paused. "Elise, will you ever forgive me?" I met his eyes. "Maybe," I said, "but not today." He nodded, swallowed hard, and walked out. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The air tasted clean. Empty, yes, but free. I didn't know then that the hardest part wasn't letting him go. It was facing what was left of me after he was gone. The first morning after he left, the house was too quiet, like a stage after the audience has gone home. The walls seemed to hold their breath, waiting for a line that would never be spoken. I made the bed with tight corners, not out of habit, but control. Control over a sheet, a pillow, a morning that could have fallen apart if I let it. When I walked into the kitchen, the sun was doing its best. Warm on the counter, soft on the plants. But it felt like pity. I brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching the street stretch into its ordinary day, and wondered how I would join it. Clara came by with a bag of groceries and a hug that smelled like laundry and peppermint gum. We said very little at first. She cut fruit, I sliced bread. The knife met the board in steady rhythms that sent small messages to my nervous system. You are here, you are safe, you are choosing. You don't have to be brave, she said finally. Not with me? I nodded. The truth was, bravery had nothing to do with it. It was a series of tasks. Eat, shower, answer emails, don't text him, don't watch the videos again. By the third day, the ache became a background hum. It was worst at night, the yawning space on the mattress, the way dreams left handprints on my chest. I cleaned, rearranged furniture, donated the sweaters he never wore but refused to throw away. I made a list of everything that was mine before him and everything that would be mine after him. On that list, I included this, a birthday. Not the one he forgot, but the next one I would give to myself on a date I chose, with a promise to treat survival as something worth celebrating. The practical things demanded attention: lawyers, banks, passwords, the polite violence of paperwork. David signed over the house in a meeting so quiet, it felt like a hospital corridor. He didn't look at me when he slid the documents across the table. I didn't look at him when I signed them back. When it was done, we exchanged a nod that might have been gratitude or surrender. I walked out into the afternoon with a manila folder against my chest and felt the sharp, clean edge of freedom. A week later, guilt found me like a stray cat outside the door.
Not guilt for leaving, that part stayed clear, but guilt for not being the kind of woman who could keep a marriage from breaking. It's a cruel trick, the way society teaches us to collect blame like stamps. I took a long walk until the sky changed color, and I asked myself a question I had avoided. If he had come home that night with flowers and honesty and begging, would I have stayed? The answer was a quiet no that surprised me with its calm. I had already left long before I reached the Crescent Lounge. I had just not admitted it to myself. One afternoon, while sorting the last of his things into boxes, I found a photo stuffed carelessly between two books. David and Natalie at a charity brunch, both wearing name stickers, both mid-laugh. On the back, in his quick, slanted handwriting, he had scribbled a date and a note. Feels like starting over. I held the photo until my fingers warmed the glossy paper, then set it on the table and stared at it the way you stare at a puzzle that's missing pieces on purpose. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like a woman who believed a story someone told her. It stayed with me. That thought, that softness. I didn't want to be the kind of person who turned pain into poison, so I wrote her a letter I never intended to send. I told her the truth in plain lines. The day at the lounge was my birthday. The candle she blew out was the one I had lit at home. The cake she tasted replaced the one that waited on my table until midnight. I wrote, I don't hate you. I hate the lie you were given. I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope with no address, and tucked it in the back of a drawer. Some messages are for the soul, not the mailbox. Work became a refuge. I arrived early, left on time, and built small islands of competence that floated above the wreckage. I took on a client project no one wanted, chaotic, behind schedule, politically messy, and brought it to a clean, dignified finish. When the director called my name in the team meeting and thanked me, the applause felt like proof that I existed outside this story. That night, I cooked pasta and ate it at the table where grief had sat like a rude guest. I poured a glass of wine and toasted to the ridiculous fact that the world was still turning. A month after David left, Clara sent me a link to a gallery opening. Come, she wrote. Let's put your eyes on something beautiful. The exhibit was about transformation, metals reworked into sculpture, broken things given new shapes. I stood in front of a piece made from shattered mirrors pressed into a mosaic wave. It reflected my face in a dozen fragments that somehow made a whole. A man beside me whispered to no one, "It's still one ocean." I smiled without meaning to. Maybe that's what healing is, not pretending the break never happened, but arranging the shards so the light finds you anyway. When I got home that evening, an email waited. The subject line was my name. The sender was Natalie. For a long minute, I could only stare at it, feeling the ground tilt. I clicked it open and read, slowly, carefully, as if the letters might bite. She wrote that she had found my number on a document David left at her place and, after staring at it for days, chose to write instead of call. She didn't know about my birthday, she said. He had told her we were separated and finalizing details, that I was cold and distant, that he had tried everything. She apologized, not in performative flourishes, but with the plainness of someone who has run out of costumes. She said she had ended it. She said she was sorry for being part of my pain. I read the message twice, then a third time. Something unclenched in me. Not forgiveness exactly, but the release of a story I no longer needed to carry alone. I typed, "Thank you for telling me. I wish we had met under honest skies. Take care of yourself." Then I hovered over send, imagining how this choice would live in me. I clicked. The email left. The room did not change, but I did. That night I slept. It wasn't perfect. Dreams still knocked at the door, but the sleep held. In the morning, I woke with a quiet plan beating in my chest. Justice, not vengeance. My birthday would not be left as a crime scene. I would give the day back to myself in a way that made meaning. I made a list, intentional and small. A dinner with the women who stood beside me, a donation to the shelter down the street, a letter to my future self, a promise to mark the day not with candles alone, but with light I created. I didn't know, as I sealed that plan with coffee and sunlight, that life was preparing a stage for a final reckoning I hadn't asked for, the kind that arrives dressed as coincidence, but has the exact shape of consequence. It was a Saturday morning, quiet, soft, one of those days when the world seems to forgive you for everything. I had just finished watering the plants when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Elise, please. I need to see you. Just once." It was David. I stared at the screen for a long moment, not angry, not trembling, just still. I thought about deleting it, about pretending I'd never seen it, but curiosity is a stubborn ghost. I typed back, "What for?" His reply came fast. "To apologize properly, to explain, please. It's important there was no part of me that wanted him back, but closure can be its own kind of healing." After an hour of silence and pacing, I agreed to meet him, public place, daylight, my terms. The cafe on the corner where we'd had our first date years ago. I almost smiled at the irony. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting by the window. He looked smaller, as if life had pressed him down, sanding off the edges of arrogance that used to gleam around him. He stood when he saw me, eyes wet, a nervous half-smile. "Elise," he said softly, "you look good." "Don't start with that," I replied, sitting down. "Say what you came to say." He nodded, fingers trembling around his cup. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. "I needed to understand why I destroyed everything that mattered. I know you don't owe me a thing, but I had to tell you, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it. Apologies, I'd learned, are not currency. They don't buy back what was lost." But something in his voice, broken and quiet, made me see the man he once was, or maybe the one he wished he could have been. "Did you love her?" I asked. He hesitated. "I thought I did, but I think I was just running away from the person I'd become with you. The man who couldn't admit he was failing. She made me feel new, until I realized I'd just repeated the same mistakes, with different scenery." There was no satisfaction in hearing that. Only a strange kind of peace, like watching a storm move off toward someone else's horizon. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I heard about your birthday plans," he said. "Clara told my sister you're hosting a dinner for single women and survivors. I just wanted you to know, I'm proud of you." The word proud fell between us like an old habit we both forgot how to use. I nodded. "You don't get to be proud of me, David." "But thank you for trying to say it." He looked down. "I miss home," he whispered. "It's still standing," I said. "You're the one who walked out." He laughed once, broken. "You're right." Then he took a small envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. "This is yours. I found it cleaning out a drawer. Something you wrote years ago. Thought you might want it back, I opened it." Inside was a letter I'd written on our first anniversary, a list of promises, patience, laughter, forgiveness. My handwriting looked like another woman's. "I used to believe those words," I said quietly. "So did I," he murmured. We sat there in silence for a while, the kind that feels more like respect than discomfort. When we finally stood, he said, "I hope someday you find someone who treats you the way you deserve." I smiled, gentle but distant. Maybe I already am. Maybe that someone is me. He nodded, eyes glistening, and walked away. I watched him go without the ache I expected, just a calm finality, like a curtain closing on a play that had run too long. That evening, I prepared for the dinner. Candles, soft music, laughter waiting to happen. The house felt different now, not haunted, but claimed. Women began arriving one by one, Clara first, then Ruth, then Amara, each carrying food, stories, warmth. The table filled with colors, smells, and voices. We ate, we laughed, we talked about everything: heartbreak, healing, how to start again. When the cake came out, they insisted on singing for me. I laughed until I cried, the good kind of tears, the kind that clean the air. When I blew out the candles, I made a wish, not for revenge, not even for love, but for peace that lasts longer than pain. Later that night, after everyone left, I stepped outside. The air was cool, the sky wide and forgiving. I looked at the stars and thought about all the versions of me that had lived inside that house: the hopeful bride, the forgotten wife, the furious woman, the survivor. Each one had earned her place in my story. I whispered into the night, sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or God, it comes from time. The wind carried the words away, soft as a promise. If this story touched something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, what would you have done if the person you loved forgot you for someone else? Because for me, forgetting him wasn't the end. It was the beginning of remembering myself.